Okay, so you want to own a supermarket. Thousands of people walk through your doors every day. They fill carts with hundreds of dollars of groceries, scan them at the register, and leave. It looks like one of the safest businesses in America. People have to eat. They have to buy milk. They have to buy bread. They have to buy meat. And they keep coming back every week. So if the average supermarket is doing hundreds of thousands of dollars in sales every week, how much money does the owner actually make? The answer is probably much less than you think. In 2025, the average U.S. supermarket generated about $668,000 in sales every week. That's roughly $34.8 million a year. And yet food retailers averaged only about a 2.1% net profit margin. That's around $730,000 in annual profit on nearly $35 million of sales. And here's the strange part. The supermarket isn't really a business that makes money by selling food. At least, not in the way you think. Because by the time a $100 grocery bill reaches the bottom of your receipt, almost all of that money is already spoken for. The suppliers want their money. The employees want their money. The landlord wants their money. The electricity company wants its money. The credit card companies want their money. And even the food that gets stolen, damaged, spoiled, or simply thrown away still costs you money. So let's break down what it actually takes to own one. Because the supermarket business is less about selling groceries and more about surviving on an incredibly thin slice of every dollar that passes through your doors. Let's start with the obvious question. What are you selling? Food. But that's where the economics immediately become complicated. A supermarket might carry tens of thousands of different products: milk, eggs, cereal, frozen food, produce, meat, cleaning supplies, pet food, toiletries, prepared meals, and increasingly, things that don't look much like groceries at all. Pharmacies, coffee shops, bakeries, delis, fuel stations, online delivery. The modern supermarket isn't one business. It's dozens of businesses sharing one building, and every one of those departments has a different margin. A gallon of milk is not economically the same as a bottle of shampoo. A banana is not economically the same as a rotisserie chicken. And a package of store-brand cookies is not economically the same as a prescription from the pharmacy. The supermarket's job is to put all of these products in one place and convince you to buy as many of them as possible during one trip. Because getting you through the front door is expensive. Keeping you inside is where the money starts. Imagine you walk into your supermarket and spend $100. From your perspective, the store just made $100. It didn't, not even close. The first and biggest expense is the inventory itself. The supermarket has to buy the products before you buy them. That means your $100 cart might contain products that cost the store $70, $80 or more to acquire. The exact mix changes constantly. But the basic problem doesn't. You are not keeping $100. You're keeping the small difference between what you paid for the merchandise and what you sold it for. And then you have to run the entire building out of that difference. That's why grocery retail has historically operated on margins around just 1% to 2%. This is one of the strangest things about supermarkets. They look like giant money machines, but they're actually high-volume, low-margin machines. You don't need one customer spending $10,000. You need thousands of customers spending $100. And then you need them to come back next week, and the week after that, and the week after that. This is the fundamental economics of the supermarket. You're not really selling groceries, you're selling frequency. A furniture store might hope you visit once every few years. A car dealership might see you once every several years. A supermarket wants to see you several times a week. That's incredibly valuable. If a household spends $150 every week at your store, that's $7,800 a year from one household. Multiply that by thousands of households. Suddenly, the economics make sense. But there's a catch. Those customers are not loyal in the way you might think. If the supermarket across the street sells eggs for 30 cents less, customers can leave. If another store has better produce, they can leave. If your checkout lines are too long, they can leave. If your prices are consistently higher, they can leave. And that creates a brutal, competitive environment. Supermarkets are constantly fighting over pennies because a tiny price difference can move enormous amounts of customer traffic. The industry itself describes food retail as fiercely competitive and operating on very slim margins. And this is why supermarkets can't simply raise prices whenever their costs go up. If you raise your prices too much, your customer walks across the street. Now imagine you own the building. The average supermarket in 2025 was about 42,272 square feet. That's roughly the size of a large warehouse. Except this warehouse has to stay comfortable for customers. The lights have to stay on. The refrigerators have to stay cold. The freezers have to stay colder. The checkout systems have to work. The bathrooms have to be maintained. The parking lot has to be maintained. The shelves have to be stocked. And the building has to look clean. Because nobody wants to buy strawberries from a store that looks like it hasn't been cleaned in 6 months. Refrigeration is particularly important. A supermarket is essentially running a giant industrial cooling system 24 hours a day. And unlike most retail businesses, you can't simply turn it off overnight. Your inventory is sitting inside those refrigerators. If the refrigeration system fails, you don't just have an uncomfortable building. You have thousands of dollars of food becoming worthless, and potentially much more if the failure lasts long enough. So the building itself is constantly consuming money. Even when there are no customers inside, now you need people. Cashiers, stockers, butchers, bakers, produce workers, managers, cleaners, maintenance workers, security, delivery staff, pharmacy employees, if you have a pharmacy. And someone has to make sure all of those people are in the right place at the right time. Because supermarkets have a strange labor problem. You need enough employees to keep the store running during your busiest hours. But you don't want to pay for a full staff when the store is quiet. So you're constantly balancing labor against customer traffic. And the bigger the supermarket gets, the more complicated that becomes. One missing employee can mean a longer checkout line. A longer checkout line means an annoyed customer. An annoyed customer is more likely to use another store next time. So even labor isn't simply an expense. It's part of the customer experience. And now we get to one of the biggest problems in grocery retail. You don't sell everything you buy. Some produce gets bruised. Some fruit goes bad. Milk expires. Bread goes stale. Meat reaches its sell-by date. A package gets damaged. A customer opens something and leaves it on another shelf. And sometimes products simply disappear. You paid for all of it, but you don't receive revenue from all of it. This is called shrink and waste. And when your net margin is only around 2%, small losses matter. If you are making $2 on every $100 of sales, losing another dollar somewhere in the operation isn't a minor inconvenience. It's half your profit. That's why supermarket economics are so obsessed with inventory management. The goal isn't simply sell more. It's sell more without buying too much, wasting too much, staffing too much, or discounting too much. That is a much harder business. Then there's another expense most customers never think about. You swipe your card. The supermarket gets paid, but it doesn't necessarily get to keep all of it. Payment processing costs money. And credit and debit cards have become an enormous part of grocery transactions. FME reported that cards represented 81% of food retail sales in 2025, making swipe fees a significant cost for an industry already operating on thin margins. Again, one transaction isn't the problem. The scale is. If millions of dollars pass through your registers every month, even a small percentage becomes a very large number. And this is the recurring theme of supermarket economics. Nothing looks expensive by itself. The problem is that everything happens at enormous scale. Now here's where the business gets interesting. If grocery margins are so thin, why would anyone want to own a supermarket? Because the supermarket has something that most businesses would kill for: millions of purchasing decisions happening under one roof. And that gives the owner opportunities beyond simply marking up groceries. Private label products can matter. Prepared food can matter. Bakery items can matter. Deli food can matter. Pharmacy services can matter. Fuel can matter. And then there's something even more interesting: advertising. Think about what a supermarket actually controls. You walk into the store already planning to spend money. You are surrounded by thousands of products. The supermarket knows what you're buying. It knows what you're searching for. It knows which promotions work. And it controls the physical space where those products are displayed. That makes the supermarket incredibly valuable to the companies producing the products on its shelves. A food company doesn't just want you to buy its cereal. It wants its cereal to be seen. So the supermarket can monetize its customer traffic in ways that have nothing to do with the basic grocery margin. This is one reason modern retailers are investing heavily in technology, private brands, digital capabilities, and in-store experiences. The supermarket isn't just a store anymore. It's a giant customer data and distribution machine. And this brings us to the biggest threat to the independent supermarket owner. Scale. Take Walmart. In fiscal 2025, Walmart reported $674.5 billion in total revenue and a 4.4% operating margin across its entire business. That's not a direct apples-to-apples comparison with a conventional supermarket. Walmart is much larger and has many different businesses. But the economic advantage of scale is the important part. A giant retailer can spread technology costs across thousands of stores. It can negotiate with suppliers at enormous volume. It can build sophisticated distribution networks. It can invest billions in logistics. And it can accept tiny margins because the volume is enormous. A small supermarket can't play that game forever. If Walmart can sell something for $4.99, and you need $5.29 to make the economics work, you have a problem. Kroger gives us another look at the size of this business. The company currently operates more than 2,600 supermarkets and multi-department stores, with roughly 400,000 associates. In fiscal 2025, Kroger reported a gross margin rate of 22.9%. But gross margin isn't profit. From that gross margin, the company still has to pay for labor, stores, technology, logistics, administration, depreciation, and everything else required to operate the business. That's why the final profit number is dramatically smaller. And that distinction is critical. Gross margin is not what the owner takes home. A supermarket can have a seemingly healthy markup on individual products while still producing a very thin final profit. That's the trap. So let's imagine two supermarket owners. The first owns a single independent store. It's in a decent neighborhood. The store has loyal customers. But the owner doesn't have enormous purchasing power. They have to compete with larger chains. They pay rent or carry a large property cost. They employ dozens of people. They deal with spoilage. They deal with theft. They deal with refrigeration. They deal with suppliers. They deal with every problem personally. And after all of that, the final profit can be surprisingly small compared with the amount of money passing through the registers. Now consider the second owner. They operate hundreds of stores. They negotiate with suppliers at massive scale. They operate distribution centers. They have private label products. They have loyalty programs. They sell advertising. They have pharmacies. They have digital ordering. They analyze customer behavior. And they spread expensive technology across a huge network. They're playing the same game, but they're playing it with a completely different set of economics. And this is where the future of the supermarket gets interesting. The old supermarket model was simple. Put food on shelves. Wait for customers. Take their money. Restock the shelves. Do it again tomorrow. That model is changing. Customers increasingly expect delivery. They expect pickup. They expect digital coupons. They expect personalized offers. They expect prepared food. They expect better private label products. They expect convenience. And the store has to build all of this while still maintaining those tiny margins. IFMI's latest industry research says food retailers are dealing with supply chain pressures, rising labor and healthcare costs, theft and fraud, and payment processing costs, while margins remained around 2.1% in 2025. So the supermarket of the future may not really be a supermarket. It may be a combination of warehouse plus, restaurant plus, pharmacy plus, delivery center plus, advertising platform plus, data company. The groceries are still there, but they're becoming just one part of the business. So, would you want to own a supermarket? On the surface, it sounds almost perfect. People need food. They come back every week. The average store can generate roughly $34.8 million in annual sales based on current industry averages. But after inventory, labor, rent, refrigeration, electricity, spoilage, theft, payment fees, maintenance, and everything else, the average food retailer was left with only about 2.1% net profit in 2025. That's the great paradox of the supermarket. You aren't trying to make a fortune on one customer. You're trying to make a few dollars from thousands of customers over and over again every single day. The shelves are full of products. The parking lot is full of cars. The registers are constantly ringing. And millions of dollars can pass through the building every year. But the owner doesn't own those millions. Most of them belong to someone else. The supplier gets paid. The employees get paid. The landlord gets paid. The government gets paid. The card networks get paid. The utility company gets paid. And after everyone has taken their piece, the owner gets what's left. That's why the supermarket isn't really a business about food. It's a business about volume, efficiency, frequency, and survival. And the best supermarket owners understand one thing better than anyone else. The money isn't in selling one more box of cereal. It's in getting the customer to come back next week and making sure there is still a little money left when they do. That's the economics of owning a supermarket.